No volume, Liz.
Second is our Inspiring Conversation series held on Instagram Live, 3 out of 4 Saturdays a month, featuring ladies within the network who are doing extraordinary things in their lives. Third being our Power Up Monday series, where one word is chosen and used to motivate members of the community. These powerful 1-minute bite-sized nuggets have been known to charge up EPR women as they enter into a new week. Next is our quarterly hangouts built to foster collaboration and networking. We've held activities such as virtual tea parties, celebrated International Women's Day, and other fun activities. Last, EPR's Women's Professional Network is a one-stop shop where female leaders can access multiple resources designed to equip them on topics that matter while building strong relationships for quantum gains personally and professionally. If you are looking to connect, support, and learn from other amazing professional Christian women, then EPR's Women's Professional Network is the place for you. Thank you.
Welcome everyone. Thank you for joining us on this lovely Friday. It's afternoon here. My name is Elizabeth Akede-Adekoya, and I am moderating today's discussion. I am located in Maryland, USA. So hello, welcome. We are so excited to have everyone here joining us from truly the global, different places around the world. So good morning to those on the West Coast of the US. Good afternoon to us on the East Coast. Good evening to those joining us from the UK, Nigeria, Kenya, or South Africa, or anywhere else you may be joining us from. We welcome you. You are welcome. And we're excited for today's discussion, today's topic on mental health. This is a mental health conversation. We know that May is Mental Health Awareness Month here in the United States. So wanting to tee something up, as we ushering that the new month that will be coming in. And we have two wonderful panelists, Dr. Shoyinka and Miss Rhoda Kariuki. They'll be, talking to us today just from the foundation of what is mental health to how do we, incorporate faith, the benefits of faith with mental health, and improving our mental health. Here at EPR, we strive to, we have a spirit of excellence that we strive to have as Christian women, of Black heritage. So really, how do we balance all of those different things those different hats that we juggle as moms, as entrepreneurs, or, as executives in our, different spheres of influence, and make sure that our mental health is, in a good and balanced place. So thank you. We're just going to wait a couple more minutes before I go ahead and introduce our panelists and start today's discussion. So just want, to a bit of engagement as you're trickling in. Just, introduce yourself in the chat, say where you are joining us from. We'd like to know who is joining us and where they're coming from. So like I said, I'm joining from the United States here in the state of Maryland. I'm going to look in the chat to see where some other folks are joining from. Oh, Yummy C from Canada. Woo. Welcome. Okay, Nora from Kenya. Welcome. Okay, Nairobi, Kenya. Cool. Nive from Maryland. Hi, Nive. We have Linda from Texas. Amaka from Canada. That's cool. Excited. Exciting. Well, I hope we're all here with the appetite for, the information that will be shared today. Welcome, Pian from London. We have Gladys from South Africa. Welcome. All right, so before I get started, just wanted to few ground rules. If we can just have everyone make sure that you are on mute while the speakers are speaking. Grab a notebook, grab a pen. I have mine with me right here. And so you can take notes as the discussion is, going on. Should there be any questions that you may have, feel free to put it in the chat, and we'll be sure to, have the speaker speak to it later on. So again, we really encourage, we want this to be interactive. We want you to, if you have questions, don't be afraid to ask. This is a safe space. So feel free to, just use the chat function, and we will definitely be able to read your questions later on in today's discussion. So I'm going to go ahead and continue. And I'm going to introduce our first panelist, Dr. Soyinka. Dr. Soyinka is a multi-award winning psychiatrist. He's an author and speaker and the chief medical officer for the Department of Behavioral Health and Intellectual Disability Services. In his role, Dr. Soyinka leverages health system policy and process improvement strategies to ensure optimal population health for approximately 1.6 million Philadelphians. So Dr. Soyinka is actually located here in the United States, and he works in the state of Pennsylvania. So as the chief medical officer, Dr. Soyinka has led the redesigned Philadelphia's crisis system and the implementation of 988, which is a policy thing here that we have in the United States that focuses on, I think it's suicide prevention. Yeah, and then in July 2022, Philadelphia was recognized as a model city for 988 implementation by the Biden administration. So welcome, Dr. Soyinka. We are so excited to have you here with us today. And I'm going to go ahead and also just briefly introduce our second panelist, Ms. Rhoda Kariuki. Ms. Rhoda is a mental health speaker and counseling psychologist with the BA in psychology. She is a community mental health champion who has been recognized and awarded at Zuri Award and FOYA Awards. Rhoda is a young lady who is passionate about people's mental well-being and emotional well-being. She also is a mental health trainer, teen therapist, and mental health advocate. Rhoda is currently doing a wonderful series on her Facebook and social medias on the impacts of alcohol use on women. So if you, would like to learn more about that work that she's doing, we'll definitely share her, social media handle. So you can definitely go check it out and learn a little bit more about that topic. So I'm now going to pass it on over to Dr. Soyinka, who will go through a couple slides for today. And then following his slides, we'll pass it on to Rhoda, and then we'll have the more interactive discussion following that. So Dr. Soyinka, I'm going to pass it over to you.
Thank you for that very kind introduction, Liz. And I'm pleased and honored to be here with you all today. I will be, Rhoda and I will be presenting some basic material to sort of frame today's conversation. And as our moderator said, we will then open the floor for conversation and questions, because I think that's there are lots of questions around the subject of mental health, and people sort of have, because there's so much misinformation about it, it generates a lot of fear. So this first part of the discussion is intended to share some basic information that should frame our further conversation today. So I'll just go ahead and share my screens and walk us through this slide deck here. All right, let me lead in by saying this. I've been exceedingly blessed in my career. Most of, if not everything that I had hoped to experience early on have been granted to me. So I feel very fortunate and very blessed, but it wasn't always that way. In fact, one of the things that has truly benefited me in an odd way has been having my own experience with what I would call a mental health crisis really early on. And if I have time later, I'll share the details. I'll share details. But essentially, early on, when I relocated from Lagos, Nigeria to the United Kingdom, and at the time I had been prescribed a medication that for medical reasons that essentially triggered a mental health crisis that lasted for months. In fact, I would say it lasted the better part of a year and a half to 2 years, and it took years after that to really completely recover. So that was a very difficult experience, very painful experience, but what it left me with was a personal firsthand appreciation for the experience of people that have to live with these conditions their entire lives, or for much of their lives in many cases. It's hard to put into words if you haven't actually lived through it. But the good news, and the real good news and the real message of that is that there is hope. And if there's nothing else that you take away from this discussion, there is hope and there is help. And we'll get into that as we go along. So I only have a little time, so some of this I'll move through fairly quickly. These are the objectives I'd like us to make sure when we walk away, understand the role of mental health in overall health, understand the role of faith in maintaining mental health, and there's a significant body of literature now that talks about this. And I'd like you to be able to walk away with some basic understanding of how to maintain your own wellness, because I've been married now, thank God, for 20 years to a wonderful person. She truly is the better half, And I also have a daughter who's 19. And so I have developed a great deal of empathy for the things that women go through. So how do we define health? This is the World Health Organization definition: complete mental, physical, and social well-being, not just not being ill, but it's really being able to function at the peak of your capacity or potential as a human being. Mental health is a subset of that. And in fact, the more we've done, when I say we, I mean the field of medicine has done research into this, and social science, the more we've come to realize that it's actually impossible to be healthy, whether it's physically healthy, emotionally healthy, socially healthy, or productive without mental health. You have to be mentally well to be productive and to live your best life. And so mental health basically means you're in a state where you can love or have relationships and work, function, and be productive. That's the easiest way to remember it, or one of the sort of rules of thumb. Now, it's also important to realize, and this is particularly the case with mental health, that it's not just when we think about, oftentimes especially here in the West, where in America, I should say, where medicine is so heavily commercialized, it's easy to think of healthcare as just when I go to the doctor, but the reality is that there are a myriad of things that go into your well-being, including starting from genetics to, the circumstances you were born into, to, the actual, what happened when you were born and right after that, things that you're exposed to in childhood, your physical well-being, the toxins and whatnot that you're exposed to, and then all these things that we call social determinants: education, jobs, family support, and so on. So these things all matter. They're all part of a person's overall health. Now, here's some concerning statistics. I don't think we really need to beat this to death, but it's helpful to make the case further if we need to do that, to understand just how prevalent these conditions are. So when I was growing up in Nigeria, we never talked about mental health conditions. We always thought it was just for the weak, or something wrong with you if you had a mental health condition. I think we've since learned, particularly during COVID, that that's not the case. So they're very prevalent. 1 in 8 persons experiences these conditions globally. In the US, it's actually 1 in 5. So very, very common at some point in their lifetime. And 1 in 20 people or persons lives with these conditions, the severe forms. They occur on a spectrum, mild or transient to severe and persistent. Those severe persistent illnesses, the people that we see walking on the streets, naked, talking to themselves, the people who can't hold a job and whatnot, they are 1 in 20, still pretty common. They're actually commoner than things like cancer, if you think about it. And these things are increasingly recognized to affect women, particularly female children and teenage girls, especially, are vulnerable. And then they don't discriminate. Now, additional findings since COVID, we know that indices of mental distress have gone up. So for example, where these things are tracked, in my day, part of my work is to oversee population health, mental health for Philadelphia, which is a of the large cities in the US. And I track this, my office tracks this regularly, and we've seen a steady rise in suicide rates over the last few years. And you know what's more concerning is that the Black youth seem to be particularly impacted by this. Now, I would talk about Nigeria, but I also looked at data for the continent of Africa, which is where we are all from originally anyway. And Nigeria is now leading the African continent. And what is concerning is we have a young population, and because for various reasons, change in socioeconomic, the sort of posture of society, values, and so on, there's been a steady rise in substance abuse, and substance abuse disorders are a predictor or a trigger or a precipitant for mental health conditions, oftentimes, not always. And one of the biggest problems we have is stigma. It prevents people from even trying to get help. And because this is an audience of women, and in respect to the particular concerns of women, I just thought and actually being prompted by Liz yesterday, I thought this data is important to highlight. So I mentioned higher risk of depression and anxiety in teenage females, and we're certainly seeing that all across the globe now. Some of that is linked to social media, we think. I mentioned suicidality, that's also gone up. We know that there's violence against females all around the world. And very distressingly, 1 in 4 young persons has experienced sexual assault, and the majority of those are females, although boys are affected as well. We know that there are mental health conditions that are particularly affect females. So postpartum depression, 1 in 7. Postpartum psychosis, much less common, but also when it does rear its head, it's a crisis for the entire family. And of course, the conditions that tie into the female menstrual cycle, PMDD and PMS. I included this slide just for one reason alone. For those who still, doubt that mental health conditions are real, and maybe they, think it's just, we often say there's spiritual attack and just sort of kind of dismiss it. This is a brain scan. This is a PET scan. So basically what they did was they injected glucose into a person's blood, glucose with a radioactive ligand attached to it, into a person's bloodstream, and then they scan their brain. The brain on the left is a person's brain, is a depressed person. The brain on the right is somebody who's not depressed. So you can see that and there are other biological markers, but this one is pretty striking. Multiple dimensions of wellness, we know, and I kind of just makes the point that I talked about earlier. And wellness in one area does not necessarily indicate wellness in all areas. And so there needs to be attention and education in all areas. Now, I'll pivot very quickly to just a few thoughts on how we can be healthy. I hope this comes across well on your screen, but some of the things that we know under our power that can impact our wellness, our ability to be emotionally and mentally well, are these things. And interesting, most of them are free or can be free. Sleep, number 1. There is increasing evidence that if you don't sleep well, you will not function optimally. If you don't sleep well, you're vulnerable to long-term damage, things like dementia, as well as medical outcomes like early death from cardiac causes. We know that now. So sleep is crucial. It's probably the foundational one. Exercise has a host of benefits over your mood, your energy levels, obviously, longevity by preventing cardiac illness. Cardiovascular illness, I mean. Diet increasingly is linked to our overall wellness. So in the West here, the food supply is laden with things that are not healthy. And so part of our work is to continually be vigilant for, these toxins in food or other toxins, things like excessive alcohol use, drug use, marijuana, and even things like even environmental toxins like the, stuff they spray on fruit or vegetables. Those things can be very damaging. Preventative care, again, it's really about knowing yourself, and knowing your own family history, because some of these conditions run in families, and the data, the evidence is when you intervene early, but even things like schizophrenia that are so potentially so damaging, when you intervene early, then the outcomes are so much better. This is one of the arguments for not being ignorant, right? Is not kind of hiding our heads in the sand and knowing how to recognize when a condition is beginning to develop or manifest itself. And then there's a lot to be said about stress management and boundaries. Boundaries is something we can talk about. Let me go a little quicker now. The faith advantage. This is small. The lettering is small, but I'll just give you the summary. I did mention this earlier, that there is increasing evidence that persons who adhere to a faith tradition, who are believers in our terms that we use, they actually do better than if you're not. If you don't practice, if you're not a person of faith. So research suggests depression resolves earlier. Overall health and prosperity even is linked to being a practicing Christian, person who goes to church or and attends religious services. Those things actually are tied to doing well. It's also protective against death and against things like suicide. But we have to be honest that in some faith traditions, people do take it to extremes, or some doctrines can be harmful. So for example, when people are not taught to be balanced, and they not taught to care for their health, or the faith tradition emphasizes guilt and self-punishment and so on, those things are not healthy, and we have to be honest and call them out. This is just a stress meter, if you will, and a little bit of stress is a good thing. If you think about how we build our muscles, this is healthy, but we also know that stress overload can kill, frankly, can just lead to death. We've all heard of people who suffered a heart attack, in the traffic on their way home, due to over stress overload. What are some examples of stress? So we don't think about good things as stressful, but they are. So I've moved more times in my life than I want to think about, but that's stressful. They've always often been for good things, but that's pretty stressful. Buying a house, getting married, all those adjustments, having a new child, which I think this audience will be particularly familiar with. Learning a new skill, these are all stressful things, but they can be considered good stress. Bad stress is really negative things that we can't get away from. A bad marriage is one of the worst, or bad relationships in general, financial challenges, bad work environments, these are all negative things. The good thing is that we can still manage. We can still, as we say in our faith circles, we can still triumph or walk in victory, even in those situations. And there are ways to do it. Now, I won't get into depth here, but I just wanted to share this to show people stress does actually have an impact. It can cause acne, it can cause breakouts, it can cause ulcers, it can cause elevated blood sugar chronically, or tip people into diabetes, stress, anger, irritability, depression, psychosis if it's bad enough, or the person's vulnerable, and reproductive problems. I think altered menstrual cycles would be one example. It's helpful to know how to cope. This is one of the more important skills that we can learn. I won't get into detail because I want to be mindful of time, but there are things we can do. Let me call to attention the Apostle Paul for a moment. So this was a man who had given his whole life to preaching the gospel all around the world and had suffered a lot as a result. At the time when he wrote the book of Philippians, he was a prisoner in Rome, which means he was under guard at all times. Some church traditions have it that Paul was actually standing in sewage, human sewage, much of the time. So smelly, dirty, foul conditions, damp. You can think about the effect on his skin and on his health. But he wrote these words. He said in Philippians 1, he said, what has happened to me has served for the furtherance of the gospel, because now people have confidence and boldness to share the gospel. Now, I want to say that is an example of what we call reframing. It means take the same situation and apply a different mindset to it. And there have been actual studies that show somebody like Viktor Frankl, who wrote a famous book, Man's Search for Meaning. He was a psychiatrist, Jewish psychiatrist in a concentration camp. Actually said that he wrote a whole book on the same basic idea, that you can be in the worst of circumstances and still find reasons for hope. So I just want to leave that with people. I know we're in tough spots oftentimes, and as women, often vulnerable, socially, economically, but I want to encourage you that there is hope. Now, some of the healthy coping mechanisms are listed on here: getting rest, exercise, connecting with others like you do on this forum, prayer, mindfulness, eating healthy. The other things are not so healthy: procrastination, blaming others, using drugs, and so on. What are some other things that we can do to build resilience? Mindset, I already talked about that. Sleep, exercise, diet. Going out to nature seems to be particularly helpful. Journaling is particularly helpful. Practicing Thanksgiving, mindfulness, radical acceptance, which we can talk about further. I talked about reframing. Another skill that is useful, and I realize it's a lot of information here, what I call strategic disengagement. So in John chapter 6, Jesus had just fed the multitude with bread and fish. They were all happy. They wanted to make him king. It's interesting and instructive for me to watch what he did. In my position, it can be stressful because of all the demands. Strategic disengagement means I choose to walk away in the moment. I just unplug and walk away. It's not disrespectful. It's giving myself space. And interestingly, he did the same thing in a more sort of briefer way, when in John chapter 8. We can talk about that further. Treatment, like I said, the quicker the better. And then to wrap, I just want to share that this book is coming out in May, sometime in May. If there's interest, I can talk about this further, but it answers this and a lot of other questions that I've come across over the years. It's written specifically for persons of faith from our part of the world, sub-Saharan Africa. Thank you.
Thank you so very much for that, Dr. Soyinka. And I'm just going to quickly pass it on to Rhoda if she would like to come on screen. Yeah, and then you can just follow up. And then once Rhoda is done, we will start going into the Q&A. So if you have any questions, please feel free to add them into the chat, and then we'll go on to have the discussion. So go ahead.
Wow, thank you, Liz. Thank you for this opportunity. Thank you, Dr. Soyinka. That was really a rich presentation. I've really learned a lot myself, and I'm believing that all of us, we have learned something. I see people typing, Proverbs 10 verse, Proverbs 18 is, impacting us in one way or another, because we really need these, and we are in Esther's preparation room. I mean, we are the next Esthers. Some of us are already Esthers. I mean, EPR have really worked on us, and we are also, beneficiaries of, the meetings that, EPR have organized, and I myself being part of it. And, with mental health is something that cannot be exceptional, in our life, and as we are preparing for this, it was all about, when do we turn to prayer? When do we turn to counseling? And when do we turn to medication, And in my head, I was just thinking to myself, as Esthers, as Deborahs, we love to call ourselves all these things, but there are some disciplines that go into it in preparation for us to be an Esther, to be that Deborah that you want to become, or that you already are. And you may not be an Esther, probably, your place could not be the palace, but in your home, you're an Esther, in that business, in that company, wherever it is, wherever you are an Esther there. And I was just thinking to myself and telling myself that, things like prayer cannot really be things that we just turn to when we need help. There are things that we need to journey on with. And as Doctor was presenting, he talked of the faith advantage, and this means that these are things that sometimes we don't have to just turn to prayer, or turn to God, like the way, we call a therapist when we need, and prayer is something that we really need to be journeying with so that we can take care of our own mental health. Yeah, and so I'm just going to be speaking mental health and the state of their mental health, basically. And for those who've been following me, I've just been talking about, for the whole of this month, I've just been focusing on women and alcohol. And the reason I've been focusing on this is because I realize that our women are drowning in things that they're not supposed to be drowning. And I'm very passionate about mental health, and particularly women and girls, because these are fields that God has given me to labor in. And it was really paining me to get the statistics and to see that even women right now, they are the men when it comes to drinking. And to me, it just clicked to me that, women are not turning to these things just because they want to. It's just because things are too overwhelming for women, and especially career women, because it is not people, other women in the rural areas who are drinking. Actually, now I being in Africa, I am in Kenya, and in the rural areas, you dare say you are drinking as a woman, that's a taboo, and so you find that the women in the urban areas, the women who are career women, and furthermore, these women are Christian women, some of them are drinking in private, and so just because they're sinking in issues that they are not able to come forward and share with us, or sometimes when they share that to us, we are not having this information on how to help them. Someone just shares some issue with you and you're just looking at them, can I give you some water, and people are just wondering, why can't you just help me, and these are things that we really need to pay attention to. We need to pay attention to people. We need to pay attention to ourselves as women, because statistics show that women who are working in full-time jobs are at more risk of experiencing mental health problems than those who are not in full-time jobs. And of course, not like men. Women are experiencing mental health problems more than men. And to me, I'm just thinking to myself, why is it this way? Whereas women, I don't believe we have more resilience. We have more coping strategies. Sometimes, more than men, the men who are here, no offense. But I am a woman, so I believe men are, sinking in mental health issues because of the pressures at work. And some of these pressures include, them wanting to fit into work. Women having bosses who are men, and sometimes you are told that you need to level up to a certain level, or sometimes you want to be promoted and you want now to hang out with, these men so that you can feel that you fit in with them. And the pressure is too much, at the workplace. And so at the end of the day, you just choose, the negative coping mechanisms, which I'm going to list just but a few. And you can also share with me, on the chat box, just let me know some of these, negative coping mechanisms that women, or even you yourself, you have had, when you're dealing with pressure from work. And, as women, other than just even pressure from work, we have pressure from home, because as much as women, we fought for equality, and for this year we are fighting for equity, and as much as we're fighting for these things, we still have other responsibilities, because as women we have this nurturing nature in us, and we want to take care of everybody. Even if we were told we could be helped with everything, naturally we will want to, how can I help? How can I take care of you? How can I take care of my husband? How can I take care of, my child, somebody else's child? How can I take care, of someone at the workplace? I heard that they lost their mother. How can I come and help you? So I find that as women, we want to go all the way out to try and take care of everybody else. And then we have our work. We have, wifely duties. I am believing that we have some people from Africa here, and we know that somehow women have not really fully been embracing the workplace. And so, people start asking you questions like, why are you working when you're not, the breadwinner at home? Why should you even be working, you see? And so you are dealing with that stress, you're dealing with the stress from work, and you are having so many things that come, to just affect you. You have your child at home, probably you just gave birth, and then after giving birth, and you have nurtured your child, and now it's time, to go back to work, and now you have to you face the crisis of first leaving work to now go on your maternal leave and all of that, and to take care of your child probably for a few months or a year or whichever time that you took. And then now that season was not so smooth for you. And then after that season, work again. And so you find that women have all this side, and now where do I turn to for help? Can I just have someone who I can talk to so that I can, relieve what I am feeling inside? Someone who will understand. Someone will not tell me that I'm acting like a weak person because I can't handle my family and work, Someone who can just understand that whatever I'm feeling is a natural thing. Another woman who will empathize with me in whatever that I'm experiencing. So you find that women are surrounded by all these things, and that is why now eventually you find that more women are struggling with mental issues. You see? Yes, and so you also find that it's being recorded. Yes, we got it. Yes, and so you find that more women are struggling now with all of these issues, and they do not have anywhere to turn to. May it be workplaces. Most workplaces do not have mental health friendly terms. May it be hope. Probably your partner, your husband, or for the men who probably could be here, apart from doctor, probably though your wife is not someone who could understand when you come home and you're saying, I'm so stressed, or when you just gave birth and somehow you're supposed to be celebrating this thing, this new phase, but then you are feeling stressed. Or you just got married and people are expecting you to be happy, and then you are not happy, you're just having all these things to process in your head. And people are not able to understand some of these things. So you find that as women, we struggle with all of these things. And I'm here to, just shed light onto it, and so that we can know that I have all these things that are surrounding me. What do I need to do? Which are the right ways that I need to, cope which I need to use so that I can cope correctly with this pressure. Because if we don't, we are going to end up, just as I was explaining about women sinking into alcohol and drug abuse. And we know that women get more affected by alcohol than men. And so we end up finding ourselves in more problems than, we could have been, just because we were trying to cope with something. And I'm here just to try and highlight some of those. And some of the negative, ways that women use to cope, of course, one is alcohol, turning to alcohol. And you will notice that I will, draw in this point quite a lot because it is something that is happening. It is something that we have been quiet about, and we need to voice it out. The same way we are now overcoming the stigma of stigmatizing people who are experiencing suicidal thoughts. The same way we also need to stop stigmatizing women who are turning to substance and alcohol abuse because they're trying to cope with something, so that we can embrace them and ask them what really is the issue. Because you do not need something that is external to help you feel relaxed. You don't need it. I mean, your body, some things were given to us naturally, like having a good appetite, sleeping. These are natural things. And when we get to a place when now we are needing extra things like a substance to help us feel relaxed, to help us feel alive, it means really there's an issue. Another thing that women turn to is conflict. Conflict. Women can cause chaos. And women are expertise sometimes in causing a situation to cause some drama, so that you can just know that I am not okay. And instead of women saying that I'm not okay, you just come home shouting at the children, shouting at your husband, sometimes just rolling our eyes for those of us who are introverts, just rolling our eyes, just being moody, just being all these things, and all of this is just trying to cope with the stress that we have because you don't want anybody to talk to you or you don't want anyone to come telling you their stresses and all of that. And another thing is we also soak ourselves in work. And we become, workaholic women. I do understand those with the temperament of a choleric. However, we do know that it's a weakness. Just to try and cope with the stress that we have. So you find that you will go to work, so much stress at work, then you come home, then you because you don't want to talk, you don't want to do anything, you want to now soak yourself in more work. You either continue with the office work at home, or you come home and you start other works. And how we know as women in their house, there's always work. You will want probably to wash utensils, you want to wash the house, you want to take care of the kid. You just want to keep working, even when sometimes you have help, but you just want to keep working just so that you can release this energy probably you are feeling inside, and because you don't want anyone to notice that you are bleeding inside, or rather that I need rest. And when you start normalizing these things, saying things like, I just need to rest, I just need some me time as a woman, because we have so much that you're dealing with, including for those who are Kenyans and Nigerians. I don't know about the US and the UK. If you have, the women groups where here in Kenya, we call them the chamas, the self-help groups, the round tables where you come and you contribute probably a couple of Kenya shillings, and at the end of the month or after a certain round you're given some money. So you have so much stress even in dividing your money and where it's going to be, and these things start to come and affect you, and you just add on to the mental stress that you have. Another thing that we do not talk about that's affecting women and that women turn to so that they can deal with the stress is building unhealthy relationships. Yes, women building unhealthy relationships, either with other women, where because you feel sometimes you're so lonely, and when you go with certain people, they are not adding any value to you, but you just feel sometimes you're so lonely, so just let me just go and fit in their group. Probably it's basically what we call gossip. You just want to go and keep gossiping, and sometimes that these are the wrong people for me to empty myself to. But you go ahead and now you are emptying yourself to these people, and before you know it, the information is all over. You hear it with other people, you see. So you see, women turning into unhealthy relationships really affects them. And also there are those who turn into unhealthy relationships in terms of the opposite gender. They turn to toxic relationships. They may have gotten to a place where they overcame them, but then now they are in this place, they are experiencing these issues, and now they want to just to have someone who can help them, you see. So they immediately turn to let me go back to that toxic boyfriend or this toxic person who was abusing them. Yes. And just to sum it all up, with number one, definitely it is prayer. Yes, and as I said, prayer cannot be an exception in our life. It needs to be something that is continual, Yes, so you need to turn to prayer. Sometimes when you feel that I need help and I need professional help, this is where now you go looking for a counselor or a psychologist or a psychiatrist, you see. And so next time we'll get an opportunity to just get to give the differences, what does a psychologist do, what does a psychiatrist do, because it is different roles. At the same time, sometimes it can be just a bit similar in one angle, but then it's an entirely completely new topic. Another thing that we can do to try and help us is having a strong social support system. Have the right people around you. Have the right group of women around you. Connect with your family. For those who are, in the US, in the UK, probably you have your family that is, probably father, or even in Kenya or Nigeria, probably you're living in the urban areas and your family is living somewhere else, and you can be able to just reach out to them, even if it's via phone. Create time to just go and visit them, because you need this social support system, so that you can be able to share your issues with them, so that they can also know when you are experiencing an issue and they can come on to help you. Yes, and so I'm just going to, and then I'm going to give it back to Liz for the question and answer forum. Thank you so much.
Wow, thank you both so very much, Rhoda. Thank you so much for all that you've said and those different tips that you gave towards the end about what we can do as women, truly having that support system, that you can openly and freely talk to, as you are going through the stressful times. That is very important. So I just want to go back to something that Dr. Shoyinka, in your slides, you had a slide about, the advantages of faith. So often, we turn to like some scriptures that, like I can do all things through Christ that strengthens me. You say, weeping may endure for the night, but joy comes in the morning, as a way of it's sometimes I feel people use scripture as a crutch to kind of deny what they're going through because they want to be positive. So I guess my question to you is, yes, faith is there are positives to having faith when it comes to our overall health and well-being. However, how do we know that we are denying ourselves the truth that something is actually going on within our, with our mental well-being or just our overall well-being? And how do we reconcile and take away that shame or that guilt that we may feel by actually acknowledging that, hey, I am going through something. So I throw it over to you, Dr. Shoyinka. I hope I articulated that question well. And then Rhoda, I'll follow up with a different question for you.
I think that's an excellent question. And it gets right to the heart of where we live, right? Where all of us live. I'll share some of this from my own personal experience, and I'll share some from what I've seen, in 20 plus years of doing this. There's absolutely a place for faith practices. So let me actually conceptualize it this way. There's a part of our faith that involves taking action, right? Corresponding actions. Bible itself says in James, faith without works is dead. I don't remember the precise scripture reference, but I know I think it's James chapter 2 or 3. One way to conceptualize getting help is that it's taking action, right? If you look at the scriptures, you look at people like, scripture is full of this, right? The woman with an issue of blood, she reached out to get help. The paralytic, or the blind man had to go wash his eyes, before he sees. So there are scripture references for, applying our faith. Now, in my mind, the red flag goes up when functioning is beginning to be impaired. What do I mean by that? I'm no longer able to work. I'm no longer able to function at home. If I'm a student, I can't study because I'm in so much distress or burden emotionally, internally. Those are red flags. Here's the thing that's the most concerning about this. Oftentimes, particularly as the condition gets more severe, people lose their ability to recognize it. It's called anosognosia, or lack of insight, or loss of insight. It means everybody else around me can see something is wrong. I can't see it for myself. And so I think that's where being open to having the right kind of people. I certainly agree with this character. You want to be careful who you have around you for many, many reasons. But that's where having the right group of people around you and being accountable to a local body or a group of people is helpful, because oftentimes you can see, this is not you, something is wrong. I'll give you an example from my life. I have always been somebody who, I'm fortunate. I'm in a field that I enjoy, and it soaks up all my natural gifts and so on. And over time, I've had benefits of excellent training. So, it's stuff I enjoy doing. During COVID, and I didn't recognize it until much further on, in the depth of COVID, I was required to be involved in a lot of of the response to COVID. So it was like opportunity meets preparedness. Like to work hard, opportunity to work hard. But what I didn't recognize at the time was it was also serving as a coping mechanism for me. So all the stress that people were going through hearing all this bad news and, coping with all the stuff that was going on in society, I basically just worked through it. You could say that's a healthy coping mechanism, but in one way, at some points it became excessive, and I had to have people tell me, look, this is too much. This is really not healthy. You need to pull back. That's an example. Now, that did not involve using scripture necessarily. I did pull from scripture to, to be able to respond to that, or to give me a frame for thinking about that. But that wasn't directly the kind of thing you talk about. Now, I think there's absolutely a place for prayer and applying the scriptures. But I do also think that once people around you start to tell you, you're not doing well, or you yourself start to notice, I'm just not holding things together well, that's time to get help. That doesn't mean I've abandoned it. It just means I am wise enough to recognize that I need help. Here's the scripture reference. The Bible says that if you teach a wise person, they will become wiser. That implies humility. It means we can always learn something, right? And we have to keep ourselves in that posture. That's a long-winded response to your question, but I hope it makes the point. The main responses are, number one, you have to, your own keys are, when I'm not doing well, I'm not sleeping well, I've lost my appetite, I'm skinny, or I'm gaining weight, things like that are, obvious. Or people around me start to tell me, you're not doing well. And then it's time to reach out and get help, whether it's informal help like counseling from a pastor, or formal assistance from a trained professional, which can be very effective. I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, that does answer my question very much. Thank you so much. So picking up what you just said, where to get help. So many people of faith, will just turn to their pastor or go to their youth leader or their women's group leader within their church. Rhoda, I just want to turn to you. Like, how important is it for pastors or leaders within the church community, to also get training and to actually acknowledge, mental health as an actual, here I would say it's a public health issue, but it's an issue that people are dealing with in the church, and being able to, have those other resources outside of just scripture to turn to. Just speak about the importance of, our leaders within the Christendom having training of some sort.
Wow. Yeah, it is very important for Christian leaders, as could be a youth pastor, it could be a worship church, you could be, a media person, whoever you are as a leader in church. It's very important for you to have information on mental health. Or rather, I love to call it for you to be literate in mental health, because you will realize that for most Christians, before they come to a psychologist or to a psychiatrist or to a counselor or a social worker, the first thing they'll do, they'll go to a pastor, or I need my pastor to tell me the right way to do. If a pastor says don't go see a psychologist, I am not seeing a psychologist. And so you find that adult pastors, and I love to take it as a good thing, because it just means that if the pastors and the church leaders and the Christian leaders could take it as an opportunity for them to get to learn more, instead of manipulating people and all of that, but they can take the opportunity to get to learn about these things. When these people come to them for help, are they able to help them? When someone comes saying, I am depressed or I'm having suicidal thoughts, are you going to start telling them that they're having spiritual attacks? Are you going to start telling them you need to pray more or you need to read the Bible? All I always tell these people is that these people have prayed. They have read the Bible. It's not that they're less of a Christian because they're experiencing these mental health issues. They just need you, pray with them. Don't just pray for them. Pray with them, because where they are right now, they're in a very dark place where they don't even think God is hearing them, you know. That one, be very empathetic with your people. And just because you've not experienced what probably your member is experiencing does not mean that now you can't empathize with them. Just put yourself in their shoes, see it from their picture. And the first thing that you can do is just to listen, even without saying anything, even without praying for them, before you quote scriptures. Some of them even know scripture more than we do, actually. Yeah? You know, it's a disease like any other disease. So when you start quoting scriptures, you start just praying for them, it is okay. But I always advocate pray with them, because we are trying to, you know, integrate them back to normalcy and all of that. But it's very important for pastors and religious leaders to be trained on mental health. I personally took on the challenge and I lecture at a Bible school, basically on just counseling and the importance of mental health, because it is very important. And Christians, we are not just going to walk out from church and go to a secular therapist. One, we need to realize that people think that a psychologist or a psychiatrist, these people don't believe in God. Some of them think that, I don't know, we are not Christians, or we can't apply scripture in helping them. But no, we are also Christians. But before they come to us, they will come to you. So it's important for you to be literate on mental health. Get training on mental health. Just read about mental health, even free on Google. Just enlighten yourself. And it's very, very important. Yes, I hope I've answered that question in totality.
Yeah, you did. Thanks so much. And I see we've gotten some questions within the chat. So this question.
If I may just add one real quick comment. Ms. Kariuki, I could not agree with you more. And I could not agree with you more, Liz. This is such a challenge for us. When I started my residency training in Nigeria, Yaba Psychiatric Hospital in Lagos. Here, our colleagues who are they were not all Christians, but some of them were. They were beyond frustrated with the faith community, because here's what would happen: you'd have somebody with a serious condition, but that's something that was treatable. They would go to church and try to help. The pastors would help them to the extent they can with the counseling skills and whatever knowledge they had, but sometimes they wouldn't get better. They'd end up in a psychiatric hospital. They would patch them together. And then when they went home, the church community, including the leaders, would tell them, you don't have faith, so you need to stop that treatment. And the people would just destabilize, and sometimes they would die from these conditions. So I cannot agree more that we need to educate our faith community and our pastors. And actually, that is the reason why this book was put together. It's written in language that speaks to that issue, explains the origin of mental conditions from a faith perspective, as well as from a civic perspective. So that, and then it gives specific explanations for how mental illness can arise from circumstances or, you know, stressors, or even medical conditions that are connected to, that can actually generate mental health symptoms, and how treatment happens, so that we can intelligently collaborate instead of continuing this unnecessary conflict.
Thanks for that piece that you added, Dr. Shoyinka. Completely agree. I did have a question in the chat, and I'm going to turn it to you, Dr. Shoyinka, because you are a psychiatrist. However, I do want to just put a disclaimer out there. If you have questions about your care if you are receiving any kind of like mental health care currently, and you are on medication, please, whatever your mental health professional suggests and provides for you is what you should go to and you should turn to. This is just an open forum that we're having an open discussion about. So with that disclaimer said, this question says, when you are taking treatment for schizophrenia specifically, how long do you take the drug for, or is it for life? So I guess we could make it a bit more broad. If you are taking medication for a mental health illness, if you are at that stage, is that something that you have to take for life, or is it temporary, or how do you measure that?
That's an excellent question. So let me repeat your disclaimer, your wise disclaimer, which is, this is not a treatment environment. This is not a treatment relationship. I am not providing specific treatment recommendations. So having said that, the answer is it depends. The good news is there's evidence that some people recover from these conditions and they don't need medication their entire life. That is true. You know, there are people who have had very serious situations. They recover, meaning the symptoms come under control. Sometimes still the symptoms, but they're in abeyance. They are so controlled that they're not disturbing their everyday life. And they can go on and have jobs and get married. I have had lots of people like that in my practice over the years. There are all other people whose symptoms cannot be controlled except with medication. And even when they're on medication, they still continue to have them. Sometimes badly enough that they need, you know, daily support. They need somebody to take them to their appointments and so on. Those are ends of the spectrum. I think the wisest course, and this is what's recommended by treatment specialists, you know, professionals, is that's a decision you should make in the context of a treatment relationship. What that means is you have a team, usually a psychiatrist, perhaps a psychologist, a case manager, and your loved ones, the people that are most impacted by your life and what happens to you. You should make those decisions about treatment with those people. Here's why. Here's why. It ties together some of the things we talked about already. If you do, if not you, if that person begins to experience symptoms again, sometimes they're not aware. It's like a frog, you know, the proverbial frog being boiled in hot water. You're not aware, but people around you can see that things are not going well. So if, and it's not rare, it's actually often the case that these symptoms will recur. They will come back, not always, but sometimes, particularly when it's a severe condition. And you don't want to allow it to deteriorate. You don't want things to devolve to the point where the person has to go to the hospital, or they become suicidal, or they damage something, or they hurt somebody, or they get hurt, or they hurt themselves. You want to nip it in the bud. There's a biological reason for that. There's a phenomenon called kindling. Kindling means the more a neuron or a set of neurons act in a certain way, the more they're likely to act in that way. You have that with seizures. You also have that with bipolar disorder, people that have mania, these episodes where they're, you know, boisterous and loud and they spend money and discriminate and all this sort of stuff. The more you have those episodes, the more you're likely to have those episodes. So you want to interrupt them as quickly as possible. What that means is, if at all you come off medication and there's a place for that, then you want to be ready to reinstitute treatment quickly if those symptoms start to come back, so you don't end up having, you know, sort of a worse outcome long term. And I pray this doesn't happen to anybody, but that is the clinical wisdom, and I think studies have borne that out. So that would be my way to think about that.
Okay, thank you so much for answering that question. I see that there was another question in the chat for you, Dr. Shrinka, but you responded to it regarding normalizing a mental health screening as part of, like, you know, your regular screenings that you do when you go to the doctor. So I think I'm going to turn to you, Rhoda, with a question and just ask, you know, what are some global or local resources, you know, that women can tap into as they are, you know, wanting to maybe get more information about mental health, or if they're going through something in their own personal lives, you know, are there any like global or local organizations that you know off the top of your head that may be a good starting point that we can go to as women? And you can focus on Kenya if you would like to answer this one question.
Okay. Thank you for that. And yes, there are some places that people can turn to. And number one, to supportive friends. Just start from the basics. A supportive friend from home, or probably your parent is supportive, or your partner, or you just have someone that you can turn to. That will be the very basic one, because those are the people who are going to identify and are the ones to tell you, I think this issue you need external help. I think where you are right now, it's not just merely some stress, it's heading to depression, and you need help with this. And other than that, we can now there are therapists, especially all over. Actually, not just in Kenya, we have therapists all over who can help us. And sometimes, because some people feel it's so private, especially probably we have people in very highly private jobs and all of that, and you just feel that I don't feel like I trust any therapist in Kenya, or I trust any therapist in Nigeria or in my country. You can talk to a therapist, even online, wherever they are, and you can be able to get them. If you're in Kenya, I am a co-founder at Toa Assist Kenya. The Toa in Kiswahili meaning we, and assist meaning just what it means, helping, we help. And to Assist Kenya, we provide the mental health services. And we provide training on mental health. So this one, we do it to organizations, we do it to corporates, we do it to any group that wants to be trained on mental health. And also now we provide the individual counseling services. So you could come to us. Or if you are 25 years and below, and probably financially you could not be able to afford a therapist, you can approach Kenyatta National Hospital for those in Kenya. You can approach Kenyatta National Hospital and go to the youth center, and you're going to receive free psychological help and also psychiatric evaluation for free. As long as you're between 14 years and below, I think 25 or 24 years, you can be able to get help. You can approach Chiromo Hospital Group. You can be able to get help there. And of course, you can be able to approach Mathare Hospital Group. When you go online and Google right now, mental health services are a bit better nowadays. And now we can be able to easily find organizations dealing with mental health, or you can just Google a mental health service provider near to you. Yes, for that's the case in Kenya. For in other countries, I believe you can be able to, of course, in main government hospitals, they all, of course, have a mental health department. It may not be fully equipped probably, but it helps. It's good to just even start with the help, and from there you can be able to be told for someone else who you can go and receive help.
I think Rhoda.
And of course, after you're religious, you go to share your issue. You will not be you're not going to be condemned, bad or experiencing the mental health challenges, but just make sure to ask for the credentials. Yes. So yeah, I hope I've answered that.
Yep, you did. And back to one thing that you did, the first thing you said, which is, the support, your family, find someone that in your, your social network that you can turn to for support. And somebody asked in the chat, they said, what if, in terms of, relationships, and I think you're the one who brought up some like women turning to unhealthy relationships during your talk. And so this person asked, what if the unhealthy relationship you have that you're turning to as a coping mechanism is with a family member who is not interested in Christianity anymore? I guess, yeah, so that's their question, is what they asked. Can you elaborate just a bit more on, that unhealthy relationship coping mechanism that you mentioned, and tying it into, like, how do you know it's an unhealthy relationship, I guess, because, like you said, fundamentally, the first thing you should really have in your toolkit, is, those support relationship and making sure that they're supportive. So I'll turn it over to you first, Rhoda, and then Dr. Sharinka, if you have more that you would like to also add to that, that piece about unhealthy relationship, identifying that they're unhealthy, and really cultivating a sphere or a collection of what does good support look like, or having a good support system look like? So I turn it over to you first, Rhoda, and then to you, Dr. Sharinka.
Okay. Yeah. So the first thing that you need to look for, even if it's a family member, it is you need to share the same beliefs and the same values. So it could even be someone who is so close to you as a family member, but you share different beliefs. And the moment you know that you share different beliefs, I would advocate for you not sharing person, because there are going to be some conflict in one or another, or probably they can help in the best way that they think possible, but their help will not really be practical to you. So you can look for someone who is who you share the same beliefs, and you can be able to share to them. And also in the family, and it can be a friend who you just met at work the other day, or someone you just met in church, or someone, it needs to be someone you shared a relationship with, someone you know very well, that before I share my issue, I know exactly who I'm sharing it to. Because we have had people who have shared issues to the wrong people, and that was their start of, their depression getting worse and even heading to suicide. So verify the people that you are sharing with. And another way to know that it is a healthy relationship, it's going to be someone who is going to empathize with you. And what I mean with this is that it is someone who is going to, put themselves in layman's language, literally just put themselves in your shoes and see the world from how you are seeing it. They're not going to start condemning you for how you are feeling. Some people, of course, they have the strong temperaments, and the way they are talking to you may think they're very harsh, but they're not being harsh. They're just how they communicate, you see. But you need to realize, and you need to, be able to pinpoint how this person is talking to me. Is this that they're just talking to me so that I can just be quiet? Or are they just trying to, tell me how I'm not supposed to be in this place to begin with, And the moment you notice such things, it's good to just cut down your story. And that's why I always advocate for professional help, because for professional help, mostly you will not experience some of these issues. So for a healthy relationship, make sure you share the same beliefs, you share the same values. It is someone who they can empathize with you, and it is someone you've done, at least you have had a good relationship with them, you've shared issues with them before, and what you shared with someone and you didn't feel helped. And I would add that just because one person did not help you doesn't mean you keep quiet. We continue knocking on that door, because you're the only person who knows what you're feeling inside. No matter what other people who are close to you say, you're the only one who know how you feel. And if you will continue to seek help until you get the right help, then so be it. And of course, have the right community set up so that you can be able to easily get help. For example, here, just basically we have, EPR, where you can get to connect with amazing women who that I can trust this person with this information, or they can, refer me to someone who can help me with what I'm struggling with. Yeah.
Thank you so much. Okay, and I'm going to turn it over to you, Dr. Chirinka, if you can just, elaborate a bit more about what does a positive support system look like in terms of, in terms of helping to keep balance with your mental.
Yes, so I think Ms. Karuk has answered excellently. I'll add a few things to that, and then I'll give a book recommendation, which I think really dives into this and has been recognized as one of the best works on the subject. The reason why we're successful one of the main basic sort of frameworks for being successful in relationships is reciprocity, right? But the other one is boundaries. It's why we have nations, why we have borders, why we have our own homes and other people have theirs, right? There's a saying that boundaries make good neighbors. Once we recognize what is yours versus what is mine, then we can navigate properly. When they bleed into each other, then we have problems. That holds true for all kinds of relationships. Now, that's obviously a theoretical construct, but it actually holds true in real time, in real life. Now, let me extrapolate from clinical relationships to what makes for good relationships, right? Because people have put a lot of thoughts into this. The first is, as Rhoda said, is empathy, but I will extend that by saying it's a commitment to your highest good. It's somebody that loves you, wants what is best for you. whether it's in the long term, right? So somebody who will challenge you when you're acting wrongly is your friend. The Bible even says so, right? Faithful are the wounds of a friend, but the kisses of an enemy are deceitful. So somebody who's going to tell you everything you want to hear just because they're enjoying getting something out of you is not your friend. Somebody who tells you what you need to hear is a friend. So I think that's the first thing, is they're committed to your highest good. The other, and is being willing to challenge you when needed. Another good, element of a good relationship is trust. You can't have relationship without trust. And let me say, trust is earned. It's not, you can extend trust, but over time, people really have to earn it, right? They have to show that they're worthy of that trust. So somebody who divulges your secrets, things that you tell them that they should keep in confidence, that's, you don't want to give that person a second chance, right? Necessarily, or you want to give them a second chance, but they have to earn that second chance, right? There's something called beneficence, which I've talked about. It's the commitment to, your highest good. And then non-sense, meaning they are going to do whatever they can to prevent harm from coming to you. And that's one of our rules as parents, is to make sure that our children, are protected from harm, particularly when they're young, but also when they're older. It takes different forms, right? When they're older, you want to give them information, make sure they're aware of the laws, make sure they're habituated and all of that stuff. Not to get too far afield, but those are some of what I think are the basic elements of a healthy relationship. Intimate relationships can be healthy, and they need work all the time, right? So that's, your spouse, best friend, sometimes other people in your life, those needed lots of navigation. So without getting into too much detail, I will post the book recommendation here, and I'll encourage you to look for a copy. It's called Boundaries. It's by doctors they're both Henry Cloud. It's a father and son, but they're Christian psychologists, and this book is a bestseller for good reason.
Thank you so much. Definitely. Thanks for putting the link in the chat, Dr. Shoyinka, and thanks for answering. And so we're coming up towards the end of today's discussion. Thank you both so much for just opening up, and talking to us about and having this mental health conversation. As we talked about prayer, we talked about counseling, we talked about medication, we talked about just the foundations of mental health as well. So we are very appreciative and say thank you for coming. Looking at the chat, I didn't see any more questions, but if you have any last minute questions for any of the audience members, please feel free to put in the chat. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to you, Rhoda, if you have any last minute words that you would like to impart upon us that are here right now. And if you can also tell folks how they can connect with you, that would be great. And then I'll ask you as well, Dr. Shoyinka, if there's anything else that you would like to add to just round up, as well as how folks can connect with you as well. So I turn it over to you, Rhoda.
Okay, one of the things that I always tell women is that we cannot afford to neglect our mental health. As you're waking up and you are slaying, you put on your makeup, you put on your best clothes, you put on your jewelry or your watch or whatever it is that you just put on. Always remember to ask yourself, how is my mental health? Or rather, just ask yourself, how am I feeling today? How am I feeling today? Yes, so you cannot afford to neglect our mental health. For us to be effective Esthers, Deborahs, we cannot afford to neglect our mental health. And it's something that also God really talks about, even in the one time, we'll just talk about what the Word of God really talks about when it comes to mental health, to counselors and all of these things, because it's very important for us as women to take care of our mental health. And finally, you can find me on social media. I see my link for my Instagram profile has been shared here. You can follow me on social media. I do a lot of advocacy on mental health. For this particular month, I'm focusing on women and alcohol. I'm culminating it, next week to the end of the month, just experts explaining to us the dangers of alcohol on women, And I believe this is a global issue, not just a Kenyan issue, it's a global issue. So you can follow me just as Rhoda Karaoke on Facebook, especially. That's where I go live. So you may find that on Instagram. I'll just share a segment of it, but on Facebook, and you can find the full videos on it, or you can find my links on my Instagram profile, and you can just be able to follow me and get educated on this information. Share it with your friends, and I pray that it helps you. And I'll be praying for you as women, and we keep praying for each other. Thank you so much.
Yeah, no problem. Thank you. We will be praying for you as you pray for us. And as we do as an organization, prayer is the bedrock of what we do here at Esther's Preparation Room. So Dr. Shoyinka, any last minute words that you would like to impart upon the audience, as well as how we can connect with you, as well as how we can get your book? All right, I turn it over to you.
Well, first of all, let me say how honored I am to be here with you, and thank you for the opportunity to talk about this critical topic. We've barely scratched the surface, but I think we've had a good discussion. Few final words. The first is, let me remind you that there is hope. There are people on this call right now who, and you may all know people who are experiencing these very challenging conditions. There is hope. People actually do get better. You're not condemned to live with these conditions in such distress forever. There's help and there's hope. So that's the first thing. The second thing I want to leave with you is the idea that faith and medicine are not mutually exclusive. You can do one and the other. You can do both at the same time and derive the maximum benefits from both. And the third thing I see, thank you for posting the link. LinkedIn is my primary way of sort of connecting, but we do have an Instagram page as well, and I will share a link to the book in the chat. It's not live yet, but it will be live in a few weeks, and what I will do is circle back with Liz and others when it's live, so you can sort of message people and let them know it's available. Thank you.
Yep, thanks so much. And as PN Pastor Nika put in the chat, she said, I was thinking to myself that given man is spirit, soul, and body, prayer is key for the spirit, counseling, therapy for the soul, which includes meditation, and medication is for the body. So, and to be optimal, at times we may need all three at the same time. So, like you said, not mutually exclusive, but they can be complementary at the same time. So thank you so much. As I've put in the chat, you have Rhoda's Instagram and Facebook, as well as Dr. Shoyinka's LinkedIn, and we will be sure to let our audience know once the book is available, how they can get in to purchase and get a copy. So before we go, I would like to just go through our announcements here at Esther's Preparation Room, which we are the organization that is putting together today's webinar. For today's webinar, we do have a giveaway. Dr. Shoyinka will be giving away one of his books. We'll be giving away one of his books once it is available. So if you are a new member, for this is your first time joining any EPRs being Esther's Preparation Room, if this is your first time joining an Esther's Preparation Room webinar or coming to any one of our events, please in the chat function, just, put your hand up or wave at us so we can welcome you. We say thank you for joining us today. We are excited to have you. We are honored that you have come. Put it in the chat, not so much so in your don't raise your hand up, but in the chat, put the emoji or just put that this is your first time, raise your hand within the chat so we can welcome you. So we're excited for you to be here with us today. We hope that you found this to be a very educational and insightful and hopeful, discussion that we had, and really honing in on that one last piece that we talked about being, there is hope, there is help, and you are not alone. And, we should not be afraid to speak up should we need help in the time of need. Here at Esther's Preparation Room, we are a global network. However, within our global community, we do have, separate communities for our different nations in the US, Nigeria, the UK, South Africa, Kenya, where you can connect a bit deeper and start growing that social, connection that connection with other women that are of the same faith. We are all Christian women of Black heritage. So definitely join and connect. We would love to have you be a part of our organization. So, we can pray with you, we can uplift one another, and we can celebrate one another as life's the good, the bad, the ugly may be happening, but we'll all be here together. So thank you for those that have been waving, saying this is your first time. Welcome, welcome, welcome. We are so excited that you're here with us. And I don't know if in the beginning, I introduced myself, but I'll introduce myself again. My name is Elizabeth Akedia Adekoya, and I am the moderator for today's webinar, as well as the Women's Professional Network lead, which is the subsection of Esther's Preparation Room that put today's webinar together. So time for announcements. So exciting. Yay. Last year, we had our very first leadership summit in Kenya. And so we are following up last year's leadership summit with this year's leadership summit, which will take place in South Africa, where we are shaping the culture. The 2023 EPR Leadership Summit is a 2-day experience, and it's going to be held May 18th and 19th in Johannesburg, South Africa. We have an amazing lineup of speakers. We have our wonderful convener, founder, inspirational leader, mentor, guide, Dr. Pastor Niket. She will be down there, as well as you can see from the flyer, a host of different speakers that are just ready to impart knowledge and really uplift and help, so you can learn from our amazing speaker lineup, consisting of influential industry leaders that are changing the world with their unique blend of leadership insight and practical experience. So if you are in wherever you may be located, it's not too late for you to get a ticket to join. Like we said, it is in South Africa, so book that flight. We do have packages for hotel available on our website. So if you would like to join, you can register today at Leadership Summit at eprglobal.com. And you can also go to our website to get a bit more information on the speakers, as well as the location, as well as packages, if you do decide you want to join for this wonderful experience. How do you connect with us? You can connect with us by going to eprglobal.com, where you can we have a host of resources there, from our mentoring program to our EPR Women's Professional Network, past webinars that we've done. We have membership available if you would like to join the community. So here at APR, we would love for you to connect with us if you have not connected with us before. And we really are grateful for everyone that has joined today, and would love to learn more about you. And we'd love for you to learn more about us by plugging in to us, to our community. So following today's webinar, you will be getting an email with the survey asking for some feedback about today's session. So we would love for you to respond and get back to us, so we can continue to, raise our lid and be able to really tailor the products that we're having here as an organization to meet the need of the women that are joining. So thank you. I can't say thank you enough. Thank you to our speakers, Dr. Shoyinka. Thank you to Ms. Rhoda. We are so excited that you all have joined today, and we hope and we pray that you are impacted for the positive, and that today's discussion really has helped you to get a bit more understanding, even if it's just at the foundation level, of what mental health is, and how, like we said, it's not mutually exclusive, that you can use prayer, you can use counseling, you can use medication should you need it, all at once. And it does not make you less of a Christian. It does not make you less of a person. It does not turn God against you. It does not turn God's face away from you. No. So just know that you are loved. We are here as a community to continue to want to uplift women, and and we can all be excellent, and we can all have a stable mental health. And we're so excited as an organization for today's wonderful discussion, and we say thank you. And with that, I'm going to close it out, and please be on the lookout for our survey, and we hope that you'll join us again for future webinars that we'll be putting on as Esther's Preparation Room. All righty, everyone. Have a wonderful day. have a good night to those in our African countries in the UK. Have a good rest of your day to those in the US, and maybe good morning to those in Asia that may be joining us. So with that, I close it out and I say thank you again. Bye-bye, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody.
Yep.
Bye.
Bye, Rhoda. Thanks, everyone.